So in this video, I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about a pretty cool fountain pen that I've been enjoying over the past couple of months. It's called the Waterman Carene. And this is, I would say, a higher end fountain pen than I normally look at and more of a classic design than I typically purchase. At retail, this pen goes for about $300 right now. I bought it used for a good deal less than that, but you can still buy these new if you're looking for them. I'm not a big Waterman fan. I don't have a problem with the company. It's just typically not a design. They don't have designs that I really find to be too attractive, but I really like the look of this Carène. And this is, I would say, loosely based on a higher end pen the company used to make called the Edson. Edson is no longer made. It's really hard to get your hands on these days unless you want to spend, upwards of $1,000. And the Carène is sort of like the, I don't want to say it's the poor man's Edson, but it kind of is. It's a scaled down version of that with smaller body, but a similarly shaped nib and some similar aesthetics. So let's just get right into it. So it's pretty much as much background as I have. So the Carène is a metal fountain pen, so metal body, metal grip section. It has a this sort of integrated nib where the nib end is like sort of part of the body as opposed to the nib being something that comes out of the body. The feed and all that are hidden within the pen, within the grip section there. The nib is 18 karat, so it's if you could make it out on there, it'll say 750 right on the right side of the Waterman logo. And over here, it says the 18K. 18K and 750 mean the same thing. It's 75% gold. On the underside, there's no feed, but really lightly stamped or etched or something like that in there. Next to the breather hole is the size, extra fine. I basically never buy extra fine nibs except for in Lamy. So I had bought this one because I got such a good deal on it used. And sometimes you see a great deal and you grab it and you want to give it a shot. And this was one of those cases. Rest of the pen, again, very classic, really nice taper. I would say it's like an elegant pen, much more elegant than I would typically purchase. There's a little bit of a lip here, but really, really slight. And there's little pieces, there's little tabs that would hold the clip in place, and they work quite well. This is for a pen in this price range. It's a little bit surprising not to have a screw-on tip, but it definitely has a snap-on. And it works well. It's a really nice action on, and it comes off really surprisingly easily, but I've never had it come off accidentally, so I'm really happy with how the clip works, even though I typically would only go with a screw-on in a higher-end pen. No logos or anything like that on the body, just really, really clean and just enameled metal. At the top, there's a really nice design, flourish, and it basically has a kind of cutaway design with some gold colored metal here and then a little enamel piece in the middle. I don't think that really is signifies anything. It's just kind of cool looking. I believe Carène means hull, as in like the hull of a boat in French. And I guess that is speaking more towards the design of the nib, supposedly looking at like a boat hull. Sorry, having some focusing issues. And I guess it might technically look a little bit like the hull or maybe even the prow, but I'm not really seeing it. To me, it looks more like a bird beak or something like that. Anyway, good looking pen. The nib, again, it's more of a classic design. We do see some cool features there. It has the little cutaway, which I think Waterman does a fair bit. A little Waterman W up there. A lot of taper here. To me, it looks a little odd, have it taper so much, but it's still, it's cool enough. Spring-loaded clip, which I think is really nice. The spring is a little weak, so I think it isn't really that great of a design, and then it does kind of get a little bit stuck there. And I would say that probably has more to do with this pen having been purchased used and having some miles on it than it does it being a really lackluster design. But the spring is just not that great. Around the bottom is a little cap band, and it says Waterman, made in France, and that's it. When the pen arrived, it had a little scuff here, which is probably one of the reasons it was such a good deal. It has some aesthetic issues like this. I think this is probably the worst. And you could see where the enamel is sort of chipped away or scratched away, and you could see down to, I want to say it's brass under there, but it's hard to be certain. But I would say this probably was a really good drop, and all that happened was this little mark with no secondary or tertiary scratches. So seems like it's a really well-made pen. You know, for it to take a drop like that and have no other damage is, you know, in my book, a pretty good sign. There is some like micro scratching on the enamel, which is, I would say that's just like typical wear and tear, and that is what happens with an enamel. But unless you're looking at it in sort of a sideways light like this, it's not really going to come up. So I think it's a pretty tough pen overall, and it's held up well for me in the past couple of months, and the previous owner probably gave it some serious use. The integrated nib is a pretty good writer. I would say it's a little bit hard to judge for me being a lefty on the extra fine, but I haven't had any problems with it, and it's always a nice starter, so I can't really complain there. And this sort of design is, I would say, pretty tough, so it does hold up well. And to buy a used pen with it being 18K and have it still be a nice writer, you know, maybe the guy that owned it before me or the girl who owned it before me was a really careful person. Maybe they weren't, but either way, it's a nice writer, and we'll get into that in a second. This piece screws off, and you could see nice metal here. It is gold colored, so probably still brass. And we see there's an O-ring here, so it's a nice fit. And then I have a standard cartridge in here, so a standard international cartridge. On the website, Waterman said they take proprietary cartridges, but I'm not sure if that's 100% true. Anyway, this is working really well with a standard international cartridge. Maybe I just slammed it on there, not really sure. And I think that pretty much covers it. This pen does post. It posts pretty nicely. So this pen is the Waterman Carene. It is a nice writer for an extra fine. I usually size up, being a left-handed person, and that means I very rarely buy extra fine except in Lamy. But in this pen, it's been pretty okay. And what I found is that I've been gravitating towards smoother papers. Like this is a Life brand paper. I forget, yeah, Life brand. And it works fine. A Rhodia or something like that would be nice as well. The CARÈNE is smooth. It has that nice 18K nib. And I have not found that I have a lot of problems with this nib. Even for like casual note taking, it's completely fine. Has no problem keeping up. And because it's extra fine, it doesn't go through ink too quickly. I'm using this with a Schneider black, kind of the standard office ink. And you can see right there, nice writer, very clearly defined lines, keeps up with me quite well, not scratchy, even on sort of upstrokes and other areas where an extra fine nib could be problematic for a left-handed person. Again, a lot of this has to do with the fact that I'm using a smoother paper than I would normally write with in these videos. But when you do combine this nib with the smooth paper, I found it to be really nice. Probably one of my favorite extra fines. And my understanding is that this nib gives you a lot of the performance of the Edson, which is again the higher end version of this, for a fraction of the price, which is why I purchased it in the first place. So I have been enjoying this pen and using it more often than I probably thought I would have. You know, I just expected it to be a fun experiment and I would see where it went, but I've spent a few weeks using this for a lot of note taking. I just kind of enjoyed writing with it. It's like not quite as smooth as it could be, but really nice writer, and it's held up well. I think this, I tend to not buy integrated nibs like this. I'm just, I guess, a little bit suspicious of them, but this is one of the better looking ones, and it's really performed quite well. So the Waterman Carene, I would say, is a pretty interesting pen. I would not recommend paying $300 for it unless you're a really big Waterman fan, or again, you're just dying for that Edson, but you can't quite get the price tag under control, so you want to buy something cheaper. Even so, at $300, it seems like an expensive pen for me. There's a lot of great pens you could buy for that. I would say that if you could find one of these used, it's a very cool pen, and because the design is so under the radar, if you are looking for Waterman pens, I think you could probably find a good deal on this one if it's perhaps mislabeled. You know, someone thinks they have a hemisphere, or maybe they're saying, hey, I'm selling a Waterman fountain pen. There's a pretty good chance you could find one of these for a reasonable price. Anyway, that's a Waterman Carene, cool pen, and I'm really glad I picked it up, but you know, not for everyone, I would say. Thanks for watching.